back to the Unstuck Movement. I'm your host, Rob Z. Today we have the great and powerful Yaakov with us, Yaakov Weinstein with us. And as I kick off these episodes, man, I love to ask powerful questions that make us think and lead us to great breakthroughs, right? The better questions we ask, the bigger breakthroughs we have in our life. So Albert Einstein said the most important question facing humanity was, do you live in a friendly or hostile universe? And how does someone even have a choice of which universe they live in? What does that mean to you? What does that quote mean to you? And what does that say about the worlds that we live in, the place that we put ourselves in life?
I think I love that question, and that question, that idea really propelled my, journey into personal transformation, as far as like even just responsibility. You know, you ever hear this idea, thoughts become things?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't know that I really understood the power of that growing up, if I even heard it. But I mean, there's another book by I'm just drawing a blank. The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton,
Mm-hmm.
and what he shows in that book very beautifully is everything comes down to perception, and and the opportunity in the question that you asked, and that quote from Albert Einstein is, and things are things, moments are moments, circumstances are simply circumstances. I get to choose at any moment, do I live in a friendly universe or do I live in a hostile universe? And the reason why that's an important choice to make is the choices that will continue to follow as a result of that decision. So if I choose that I live in a hostile universe, I'm going to be reacting to life. I'm not, there's only, I'm not going to be um, at the source or taking control, so to speak. I'm going to have to react. I'm going to be reacting constantly. But if I live in a friendly universe and I recognize that things are happening for me instead of to me, oh my gosh, the whole world just opened up. No matter what I'm dealing with in my life at any particular moment becomes an opportunity. The same thing, the same exact circumstance.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, isn't it? Because the people we have around us in our life, you could have amazing people near you in your life, but if you're not in the right headspace, you're never even going to know they're there, because you're never going to approach them in the way that they need to be approached in order to strike up a conversation with them, in order to build a
Yeah.
relationship with them. It's incredible how that is so true. And just as a small example for me, I've lived in a fairly small town my entire life in central Pennsylvania, and I always thought like, man, there's not people around here who want to grow, who think differently, who have ambitions to do bigger things. And then as I got into entrepreneurship and as I started to meet some of these people, because I was putting myself in a different headspace, I was putting myself in different environments, I was thinking differently, I was looking at the world differently, then these people started to show up in my life. And I'm like, holy smokes, they've been here this entire time and I never knew it. And I know of smaller towns that I'm very tied to that have maybe 4,000 people in them. And I've met absolutely incredible people who've changed my life in those towns. So this concept that only great people come from big cities, right? Or interesting people come from metropolis areas is a complete lie. There's amazing people everywhere that will impact you in incredible ways, motivate you in incredible ways, inspire you. So I really love that. And it's really, really true, man. And I want to just introduce everybody to the podcast. This is the Unstuck Movement. So we break those chains that are holding you back in your life with this platform. These are true testimonies of breakthrough. I want to thank the Connected Leaders Academy for making this platform possible. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. And today, our guest, which I'm going to get it right this time, Yaakov Weinstein, is a certified life coach and Psych K facilitator who believes deeply in the power of creating our reality. With a passion for guiding others, he combines resilience with dreams to help achieve the lives they desire. So, it's interesting as I started this episode and I started it kind of clunky. It's interesting how when we dive into something, it's not always perfect. It's not always exactly right. It's going to be just getting into it, starting it, seeing how it goes, and then moving forward from there. And I feel like so many times in life, the resistance that we have from just diving in and starting something keeps us from beginning and getting to where we need to go. For you, what has that path been like? What was the resistance or thing that was holding you back that you had to break through to get to what you're doing now?
Believing in myself, recognizing my inherent self-worth. I heard a really great quote, you know, our inner world, our outer world actually is a reflection of our inner world. We tend to think, when all the things outside and around me, that is what's going to allow me to show up powerfully in my life. But everything that goes on outside of me is simply a reflection of what's going on inside of me.
Mm.
And when we don't recognize who and what we are, that, our our self-worth is not up for debate. We are not here by accident. When you think of the probability of what it took to actually be here, it's more likely that we wouldn't be here, that we shouldn't be here. And then so many of us go around our lives like, when I achieve this, when I finally, do this, that, and the other thing. And that was actually how I ended up married at 19 years old, because, I blamed my parents for all of my issues. So obviously, all I need to do is start a new family and start a family as soon as possible, and all my issues will magically go away. But at the root of that was simply, again, thinking that something outside of me is going to complete me, going to fix me. And that's utter garbage.
It's great way to put it. It is utter garbage. That is so true. And I really, you just made me think of something that I haven't thought of in a while, and I absolutely love this. So you mentioned the rare chance that we're even here, right? In a normal ejaculation, there are about 100 million sperm. Okay. So, and I love it. I love to think about this because it blows your mind. So out of 100 million possibilities, I was the one who got through. You were the one who got through. Just by that, that's not a coincidence. And coincidences aren't even real. There's no coincidences in life, right? But there's no coincidence that you and I got through, right? There's a very direct and specific purpose for us being here. If we beat 100 million other sperm to make it into the egg. I just love that in general. That to me is like that. I had not thought about that in a couple of years, and you just brought that back to my mind. Like, that's motivation in itself to be like, man, I'm here for a reason. I already won. By the time you're born, you already won in such a big way. If you can
Yes.
live from that, so you just brought
Yes.
that back to me, man. I needed that brought back to me. That's really, really, really good.
Well,
Okay.
actually, if I can just make it a little bit more intense, so to speak, depending on where you get your information from, TikTok or Instagram, that number might even be 400 million or 400 billion,
Mm.
And then to think that the two people who came together as well, like, your combination couldn't have been from anyone other than your two parents.
Mm-hmm.
And they themselves are that same product.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to think about. So you got married at 19 because you wanted to do things right that you felt weren't done right the first time, right? With
Yeah.
your parents.
Yeah.
How did that play out?
Well, I'll start off with the fact that it was a tremendous gift. I have two awesome children from that relationship, a almost 16-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son, who weren't going to come here any other way. And but it was a difficult 14 years. We actually met when I was 15 or 16 years old. Yeah, I mean, it was a very tumultuous marriage, just like my childhood. We were separated a lot. We fought a lot. We definitely threw the D word around a lot.
Mhm.
But, looking back, it's like I expected her to fix me. That whole idea of you complete me is, again, utter garbage. You
Yeah.
know, like I need to be already, I need to have my cup full
Mhm.
and bring that to a relationship, you know?
It's interesting that you said that you expected her to fix you. This is in my first marriage, I had the opposite where I thought I didn't need to change and you just need to kind of accept me for who I am. Right. So I was like, and I can distinctly remember saying this back in my mid 20s, like, I can't change. I'm just me. Like, this is me. And you're going to have to deal with me because I can't change. And I literally thought that I couldn't change. I didn't know that I had never heard anybody talk about the ability of being able to change who you were. And that is the God's honest truth. And so from there, I started to learn. I think Tony Robbins may have been the first person. And then there was like a snowball effect to where I am today of like, oh, I'm supposed to change. Oh, I'm designed to change. Like I have to keep learning, growing, evolving, and getting better because that's what we're created to do. If we stay who we are, then man, and I know people who have stayed who they are, and that's rough. It seems like sometimes those people are happy staying where they are and they're content with that. I was never born with that contentness.
Yeah.
For me, it was like I didn't have a choice. I have to keep growing, and maybe that was the spark that I needed, like hearing that I needed to change and me saying I didn't know how to. I don't know if that was like maybe the fact that I'm bringing it up, it probably was some sort of spark that jarred me. Like, oh, I can change. I can do different. I can do better. What inspired you to change and to grow and to do better?
Well, at first, I mean, when I first got married, it wasn't completely about her fixing me because it was, I had this naive belief that, hey, two people living completely for the other person, everybody gets what they want. This marriage thing is going to be easy. Um, but then I got married and I couldn't stop thinking about myself, you know, and and I just really just blamed her for everything because again, like there was nothing wrong with me. Like
Yeah.
at the beginning of how my transformational journey went, it actually started with physical fitness. I remember for the longest time, I used to think I was like this woman. She has no clue how to do laundry. She keeps shrinking my shirts and one day I look in the mirror and I was like, you fat mother, what the hell happened to you? And it was in that moment where I was like, okay, I got to do something different, you know? And that started leading to recognize, slightly more responsibility. I started thinking more about what I was eating, how I was spending my time, and that sort of thing. Um, I definitely wasn't open to personal transformation for quite a while. And actually, at the beginning of my personal transformational journey, I used it as an opportunity to become the biggest entitled jerk.
Yeah.
That was like the first, after growing up thinking, getting this idea that, like who I am, there's something wrong with me inherently, so I need to become somebody else. And then in my first, introduction to transformational work, I find out, no, I'm perfect just the way I am. And I just ran with that. Yeah, I ran with that. And it was a real gift because it sped up my bottom. Like it really sped up my bottom in a significant way. And had that not happened, who knows where I'd be today.
When you say it sped up your bottom, I mean it brought you to rock bottom a lot faster than
Real
you
quick.
anticipated.
I started, yes, yes. I stopped hiding I don't know what language I can use here, but
A douchebag? Is that that's the word that comes to mind
yes,
for me.
yeah, at the very least, or a tush. Yeah, I was, yeah, a real tush. Yeah, to say the least. And it's funny, like I had like a really difficult conversation with my daughter, I guess even earlier this year. You know, she was telling me how grateful she was, you know, of the journey that I've been on and how much I've grown and stuff like that. And I was like, well, how did you see me before? You know, because I always prided on myself by like, I'm not going to be like my father. I'm not going to do the stuff that he was. You know, he was pretty physically abusive, emotionally abusive, and I'm not going to be like him. Like, I mean, I have a whole bunch of like ridiculous stories of how I was disciplined as a child. You know, the most they used to love saying things like, well, if you're going to act like an animal, you're going to get treated like an animal. And that played out in all sorts of ways.
Hmm.
So I was so sure that I was better than my dad. And she starts describing to me, at least the way she used to see me, exactly the way I see my father.
Hmm.
And it just drove in that idea that if we don't have a vision of what we're working towards, if we don't know what we don't want is what's going to show up in our lives.
Yeah, we're going to continue to play out if we don't have a vision for what we are going after becoming, then we're just going to be what we knew we grew up with, and that's whether we know we're doing it or not, we just end up doing it. Right? It's like
Yeah,
there's nothing else built into like, well, what else am I supposed to do? This is who I am. This is how it is. This is it, if there's no intentionality behind it, and vision is difficult. It is difficult to discover your vision and follow it. Like I've found it difficult. I've wrestled with that many times. But I think that's the point. It's supposed to be difficult. It's supposed to be a challenge because we're thrown into this world with we get programmed however we get programmed, and then we have to break all of that and find that path. Unless you get programmed very well from a young age, which some people do get that luxury. But even then, we all are born with the struggle that we have to go through. So what was the vision that you wanted to become that you weren't?
I wanted to be someone who, you know, supported my kids, was there for them, you know, loved them unconditionally, you know, playing with them, um, their friend when appropriate, their role model. Like you know, I wanted to be Superman to them. But I that was kind of more like a fantasy. It wasn't like my focus. I didn't really know how to go about it. And again, like what you were saying, like yeah, I really just didn't know how to go about any of this stuff, you know. And yes, vision is important. And I liked how you mentioned how people are programmed. And that's true, we are programmed. And I think so much of this would be easier if we were more honest about that. If we recognize that, hey, we are programmed and we don't have a choice in whether or not we want to be programmed, but we can choose the programming,
Mm.
you know? And I think, I mean, something that I would love, for example, you know, like we are designed to survive. And what that essentially means is not die. And we have this idea that just because we're alive, that somehow we know what we're doing. And the
Hmm.
truth is, science regularly, it's 2024, and we're still discovering new ways, new, you know, new things that our skin bags are capable of. And yet, when do we even start questioning? It's like, hey, like, why do I do the stuff that I do? Am I even allowed to ask those questions?
Yeah, very true, man. Very true. And we keep also I see in our society when with humans we repeat the same things over and over again, and especially the world we live in now, there's so much contradicting information. Sometimes it almost seems on purpose, but it's also I think because people are so different, and something that is great for me is not great for somebody else. Like intermittent fasting, which I've been doing for a while, and it's really been helpful for me. It's helped me a lot. I see these studies come out saying that it's horrible for you. It causes cardiovascular disease, all these different things. And I'm just like, dear Lord, like, can anything just be the thing that's good? But I think that's the challenge of the world we live in, is you have to go, like you were saying, you have to go inward to create your outward reality. And we have all that we need on the inside. And through my faith in God, like God created me like that. I already have all of the answers, that I can go to him and talk to him, and he's going to help me, guide me. But I've got to build that relationship. And if I don't build that relationship, I'm going to have one heck of a hard time pulling in everything from the outside to make me feel better. So I want to ask that question. We're going to dive into that in a second. I got to shout out the sponsor of the podcast, the Connected Leaders Academy. We're going to jump into a spot for them for 60 seconds. When we come back, I want to find out what that was like for you, going from outside to inside and flipping that from living inside inwardly to outwardly. And how do you help other people do that?
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JASCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So, Yaakov, what has that been like for you, changing that, taking in everything from the outside and letting that impact the inside world of you, and then what you do now, which is, build the inside and the outside world reflects that? What has that journey been like?
It's definitely had ups and downs. Our default programming is strong. I definitely, I still struggle. I've been in personal development on the way up, not just my catalyst down. That would have been since 2016. I think what made the biggest difference, and what makes the biggest difference, is this idea of gratitude. Now, we all know about gratitude. It's gotten to be a buzzword of sorts. My first relationship was this checklist of, I'm grateful for my house, I'm grateful for my clothes, I'm grateful for my shoes, I'm grateful for my family, going through the motions. But that's not what gratitude is. Gratitude is how when you think of a funny joke and it makes you smile, that's practicing gratitude. Practicing gratitude is when I think or look for moments or circumstances and I allow them to influence how I feel. And when I'm in a moment of experiencing gratitude, it can be any way. It can be a range of feelings. It can just be happy, and it can be crying from immense joy.
Mm-hmm.
But if I haven't already answered that question of, do I live in a friendly or a hostile universe? And my answer isn't, I live in a friendly universe, gratitude is going to be very difficult to come by. Because there's always what to focus on. Things are going all sorts of ways. The first time we tried to meet, there was a mix-up. I could have just as easily as screw this guy. What do you mean? My time is valuable, blah, 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 blah. What's the point of that? That ensures we probably don't have a conversation, and who knows who is affected as a result of it. So the easier or the more productive attitude is okay, great. Somehow this is happening for me. I don't know what, I don't know how, I don't know why. But then to, affirm this even more, there was another podcast I was supposed to be on a couple days after you, and we were having technical difficulties and we couldn't go live either. So once these things start happening more regularly, yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, the world is just taking a big dump on me. Oh my gosh, life sucks. Or it's like, no, this is ridiculous. This is a joke. Here I am. I had all these plans. This is happening multiple times. Like, this is ridiculous. But when I live in a friendly universe and things are happening for me, it's like, okay, great. Somehow it's better to record this week than last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's, I like to try to look at it as impersonal as I possibly can, because I was at the dollar store today after the gym. My dollar store has these really good energy, or not energy drinks, but like hydration drinks. And I went over to get one, and the line was like super long, way longer than it needed to be. And there's one old lady this old lady's always there, and it seems like nobody else ever shows up for work. And man, people were just disgruntled. They're angry. They're like complaining in the line. And then the manager comes out and he opens up his register. So some of us go into his register, then his register shuts down, and like he can't even do anything. So the lady that he had rung up the groceries for, she gets fed up and just leaves. She leaves all of her groceries there and just leaves the store. And she had like so much stuff. And I felt so bad for this guy. And he just stood there like emotionless for like 5 minutes while the machine came up and started running. And I felt many times during this process this rage boiling up inside of me of how unjust and unfair this was. Now, I didn't really have anything to do. I mean, I wanted to get home and start working, but I didn't have anywhere I had to be. And another lady left. She's like, I can't believe this. And she throws her stuff down and she storms out. And in a certain other situation, if I would have been in a different mood, if I would have been in a hurry, I would have felt the same way. And I would have complained about it and got in my car and probably still complained about it. But in this moment, I just kind of was there and I was like, man, when I finally get up to the front of this line and talk to this guy, I'm just going to make him feel good, because I can tell he's like dying inside, because he hates who likes this? Nobody likes this. They hate this. And I got up and I just said, man, I'm sorry you guys are having such a hard day. And he rung my stuff up, and I said, I hope things get better today for you. And I could tell that he was very grateful that I said that, because he's waiting for somebody just to yell at him or just to be super rude to him. And it's not his fault. What's he going to do? Like, the register's not working. But it's interesting when you're being aware. And I think this goes back to you saying that you thought your ex-wife was shrinking your shirts, but it turns out you were getting fat. It's like this unawareness. When we're unaware and we're just living from like this, animalistic part of us, we can just be so freaking rude and miserable about life. But it takes, for me at least, it takes the awareness every single day of being like, man, I'm just grateful to be here. This is just a great opportunity, and I should look at it that way. And I pray all the time, just let me look at life that way every day. Let me approach life that way every day, and I'm going to be a lot better. I don't even know what I'm doing with this right now. I think
what you said like points to like a very important thing. Like, we all have this idea, like, it's like, I don't want to be a victim, and we have this idea of what a victim is. And the truth is, to the extent that we show up as victims in our lives is how much success we actually have. And I think with all the work that we do, the last place we allow ourselves to be victimized is by our thoughts and our feelings.
Mm.
We have 60,000 thoughts a day. And so many of us, especially until we learn that we think we are our thoughts, we're not. Brains think thoughts. That's what they do. The idea that we even call it thinking most of the time is wrong. Like, we should call it thoughting, because we're not doing it. It's happening. It can be a result of the food we ate. It can be simply because that's what I thought yesterday. Have you ever had this? Have you ever thought for a moment that you are your hand? No, it's like, my hand is a tool. I have a hand. But that's the trick the mind plays on us. We think we are our minds, and we're not. That's why meditation, things like meditation are so important, is to see yourself thinking, becoming the observer, allows us to step out of ourselves and see that we are more than just our thoughts and our feelings, our bodies. But it's so easy for us to think the way we've always thought, because thoughts are habits, just like sucking your thumb or biting your nails. It's simply a habit. And there's a whole chain reaction that happens as a result. So if we don't get in control of that, if we don't take responsibility, if we don't start doing, things will go a certain way. And we'll feel like, hey, it's not my fault.
Yeah, man, it's really true. And I challenge anybody watching or listening right now, when you find yourself in a certain kind of mood, question like, how did I end up here? Right? I notice this especially when I'd find myself in like a funk, and I'm like, how did I end up in this funk? Like, what was going on? Like, I used to not even question it. I used to just be like, well, here I am in this funk again. I hate everything and I hate myself. And this is just me. This is just how and that was the me that couldn't change. Or the me that couldn't change was like, I hate myself. I hate the way I feel right now. I'm mad at the world. This sucks. And you probably don't want to be around me because I'm miserable. But when I started to like pay attention to it, I was like, well, how did I end up here? Well, let's go down through the pattern of all the things that I didn't want to do, that I did anyways, that were bad habits in my life that led me to this place, and the bad things that I ate, the bad things that I watched or listened to, the things that I ingested, just all of these different things played into me being so self-loathing and miserable. And if I could just follow the pattern, then I can see the way out of it. And like you said, meditation is such a powerful tool, because you can then see, oh, I'm not doing any of this. These thoughts are just like boom, 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 flying at me a million miles an hour. That's why I love in the Bible when it talks about standing guard at the door of your mind, right? So standing guard with all the thoughts that come in, stand guard, and you have to be there watching what you're allowing to go in, because what you don't realize is you're allowing so many different things into you that influence you in so many different ways. And you cannot possibly sit there every single second of the day and block them out. But you have to be aware of how are they affecting you, so you can steer clear of the things that you know are affecting you horribly. Did you have like a breakthrough moment for yourself where this started to change, or you knew like, okay, this thing, just like I'm asking for an example from you, this way of thinking or this way of doing things is not working for me, I need to do it differently? Was there like a moment you're like, oh shoot, I just caught this happening to me? Oh no, I just noticed that I do this thing that I hate doing, that I do every day. And then you started to change from that process. Do you have like a moment that happened?
I think so. So for the longest time, I lived like everybody is out to get me. And I have proof, I was sexually abused, physically abused. I've been homeless. I've had a lot of, my youngest brother, when I was 19, he was 10 and a half. He was run over and killed. I've had a lot of bad stuff, so I have proof, like the world sucks and it is what it is. You just gotta make or break it. You just gotta do what you can to survive. And my life looked that way. Because I was constantly fighting anyone and everybody. Everything that happened, it was like, somehow this is going to come back and bite me in the butt. And when I heard this idea that things are either happening for me or to me, at first it was like, go hang yourself. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not true. And the more I started thinking about that, the more I recognized as like, well, holy cow, like so many things, like maybe I had to start more like with the easy stuff, recognizing that my two older kids weren't going to come into this world any other way besides, their mother and I. And for that to happen, my childhood had to go a certain way because I had to not follow along the footstep of my parents to even meet this woman. So slowly but surely, I started being able to realize and see that, okay, this is going towards something. And the more I would practice this idea that everything is happening for me, life immediately started getting better. Opportunities that may have always been present, I now started actually being able to see because I wasn't constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that's one of the things that my clients tend to notice is like I'll work with a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners, and we don't work on their business. I don't offer any business strategy or anything like that. But when we take ourselves on, when we start doing that inner work, things that have always been available, we start being able to see. It's one of the ways we stop being in our own way.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing hearing all the things that you went through growing up, all the different traumas that most people never would have overcame or gotten out of. It's no wonder when you got married at 19 and started having kids, that you fell into the same pattern, because that's quite a strong pattern. That's a hard one to break that most people don't break. I'd say 95% never break. Why do you think you were able to break it?
I've always been a fighter. I think I've never been willing to settle. To my father's credit, he had his childhood was horrendous, in many different ways. And he saw certain things in me from his perspective. He's like, if I don't get this stuff out, if I don't get these personality traits out of him, the world's going to eat him alive. So he was coming from a place of trying to make it possible for me to survive, when what would have actually been useful was teach me how to maximize my strengths, learn how to see my strengths, and, surround myself with people who can balance out my weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've given up so many times. But I've never been good at staying given up. At some point, it's like, I had my next younger brother actually took his own life a few years ago, and this is probably going to be a controversial statement, but I think what he did took courage. Obviously, it's not the right thing to do. He was wrong in every sense of it, but he was so convinced that life sucked and everything was just more and more poop on top of him. Like, he didn't want to be a part of it anymore. Obviously, that's not the only way to see things. Obviously, there are other ways to see things. And I wish that some of the stuff I know now, I would have been able to share with him in a way that could have made a difference for him. But I was never able to do that. And I'm grateful that I haven't been able to do that. And I've kept fighting, no matter how many times things don't go the way I've liked them to. Again, back to this idea, everything is happening for me and not to me.
That's really interesting, and I feel the same way about myself. Like, there's this thing where I just can't stop doing the things. Like, I can't quit, which is bad when they're bad things. but it's really good when they're good things. And it's interesting. You're making me think about that, because I have thought about it this way before. It's like I've given up. I probably gave up yesterday at some point. like, screw it, I don't feel like doing this anymore. But like a couple of seconds or minutes later, I'm like, nah, this is the right thing to do. I'm gonna keep going. But and that is really, really true, man, because there really is just like I don't even know necessarily what giving up feels like anymore, because I don't give up on stuff anymore. I might stop doing it for a long time. I might, like, jujitsu is a great example. I took over a year off from something that I just absolutely loved, but I always said to myself, I'm gonna go back to it. Like I'm gonna, and now I'm back to it. Like, so I knew I wasn't done doing it, but I was done doing it for a period of time, and that's really interesting. I'd love to get into the mind of somebody who does quit something, because for me, there's always regret in the quitting. Some people, maybe they're okay with that regret. Some people, maybe they can't, it's like they have the regret, but it doesn't matter. Like it whatever that is overpowers them to where they have to just stop doing it. They, even though they have the regret, they can't get back to the thing. But for me, and it sounds like for you, it's like not a choice. Like, well, no, I know, and maybe it's what I've learned. Maybe it's what you've learned. I have to keep moving forward. I know I know a breakthrough's coming. I've heard from enough people that are close to me in my life that if I keep going, there will be a breakthrough. When it gets the most difficult, you're right near the breakthrough. And I've heard that enough times, be like, okay, I believe it. When it gets really, really hard and it seems like I really want to quit, the breakthrough is like right around the corner. And I believe that. And I've seen, and then when you've seen it happen for yourself or for others, you're like, oh, that is true. Even though everything in me is saying it's not true, a part of me knows it is true. And so I'm going to keep going forward.
Yeah. And listen, I mean, I've always had this obsession with, like, we are meant to be happy. We are meant to enjoy our lives. We are not meant to settle. We are not meant to have these mediocre existence. Like, it's just not what we're wired for. We wouldn't be as capable as we are if we were just meant to just drone on through our lives. Yeah. But then again, these come back to our, like, what's our view of the world? What's our view of life? It's easy to say, oh, our dreams, they're just there to tease us. No, they're meant to inspire us. Mm-hmm. If dreams were just, dreams are not there to torture us. Like, I do not believe in a God that allows me to dream just to show me the things that I'll never get to accomplish in my life.
That'd be pretty cruel.
Yeah. And then even from an evolutionary standpoint, if they were that detrimental to us, we'd stop doing it.
Yeah. Hey, that's very true. Yeah.
Dreams are meant to inspire us. And I think that's part of where we also tend to get stuck is, we'll have some idea of who we want to be and where we're trying to go. And then we use that as a measuring stick for how bad and wrong we are. And then we beat ourselves up. But that's backwards. We're supposed to look behind us, see how far we've come. And we judge ourselves based on where we've come. Mm-hmm. And where we're going is meant for inspiration.
Yeah, amen to that, Yaakov, because that's so true. And that's something that I encourage people to do, is write down your history, the journey you've gone through, like a timeline of your years. I've done that multiple times for myself, and I save all of them. They're all over here somewhere. I'll go back and I'll look at them and be like, oh, wow, man, look at the growth that happened here. But you forget. It's easy to forget, so you need to write it down and look at it. And be like, wow, there's been a lot of progress. That's right. I am getting better, because day to day, second by second, you lose sight of it. But if you look at that timeline, it's like, oh man, things are getting better. Life is getting better. I'm growing. I'm learning. I'm evolving. And if you write down that timeline and you're not getting better, that's a great sign that, well, freaking A, man, it's time to start today. Like, that's got to start right now. So
yeah. So actually, that's something that I'll have my clients do is it's called a journal of awesomeness, and where you start practicing on a regular basis, writing down the things that never were going to work out and then somehow they did. And it may be hard to find those at first, but when we start practicing looking for them, we can start building that muscle. We can start showing ourselves, oh my gosh, things actually are happening for us. And then as a result, more of those types of situations continue to keep happening. And the more proof, the more evidence that we're able to prove to ourselves is like, oh, like, wait, things actually do work out.
Yeah.
Our life continues to work in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff, man. We have to wrap this episode up. This has been so good. I love this conversation. I wanted to mention, you offer a 6-month group coaching program with what you do. Do you want to mention a little bit about that?
Sure. It's actually a new program that I'm offering, and I'm very excited to share that with all of your followers and anyone else who's listening for that. And I'm also going to offer it at a pretty significant discount. Normally, it would be 6 months of group coaching for $4,000, and anyone that signs up through the Unstuck Movement podcast will do 50% off for $2,000 for 6 months of group coaching. And it will be an opportunity to really work through some of this foundational stuff, to really start looking at how have I been viewing, like, what are my views? What are my beliefs? Why does my life look the way that it does? And as we continue to go through that journey together, we'll question, because that's the thing. You mentioned that earlier on, questions are the steering wheel of the mind. We need to learn how to ask better questions. We need to practice dreaming more. We need to create the vision for our life and what we actually want. And we need to surround ourselves by people who can remind us of who we say we are, because we're going to forget. That's part of being human.
Yeah, very true. What's the best way people can get a hold of you, to get in contact with you?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Coach Yaakov. That's Yaakov. My website is bio.site transformational consulting. I have some free stuff there as well. Love to connect with you.
Cool. Yaakov, thank you so much, man. This has been a really great conversation, and I want to thank you for being a part of the Unstuck movement.
Absolutely, Rob. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.